Gabrielle Adams nearly dropped the garment bag when the building's glass doors opened for her automatically and the icy draft hit her like a slap. "Great," she muttered, hugging the suit closer to her chest. "Delivering a $3,000 custom suit to a man who probably won't even look at me. She wasn't supposed to be here." Normally deliveries were handled by interns, but the client had requested a last-minute adjustment and insisted it be dropped off before noon. And with everyone else either out sick or on lunch, Gabrielle had grabbed the bag and sprinted out of her tiny tailoring studio in Brooklyn, hopped on the subway, and braved the gusty March wind to get to Manhattan's towering skyline. This tower glass, steel, and power was home to Sloane Industries. She looked it up on the train. Tech, acquisitions, and something about clean energy. The CEO was young, ruthless, and filthy rich. Xander Sloane. The name alone sounded like it belonged to a billionaire in a movie. "Miss," the lobby receptionist's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Can I help you?" Gabrielle adjusted the strap on her shoulder and held out the garment bag. "Hi, I'm from Needle and Thread Tailoring. I'm delivering a suit for Mr. Xander Sloane. He requested it before noon." The woman's eyes flicked to the clock. 11:46. "Take the executive elevator. Top floor. He's expecting it." Gabrielle blinked. "Wait, I'm going up?" I thought I could just, but the woman was already pointing toward the far side of the lobby. "Right there." Gabrielle clutched the bag tighter and walked toward the elevator, trying not to think about how out of place she looked. Her coat was thrifted. Her boots had seen at least 2 winters too many, and her hair was frizzing from the wind. She ran a hand through it anyway. When the elevator opened, the space was silent and polished like a museum. She stepped inside, pressed the button for the top floor, and felt her stomach drop as the elevator soared upward. The doors opened to a private foyer, and a woman in a black pencil skirt stepped forward. "You're the tailor?" Gabrielle nodded. "This way." The office they entered was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a sweeping view of Manhattan. There was a dark marble desk, a leather couch, a fireplace who had a fireplace in an office, and standing by one of the windows, back turned, was a tall man in a navy blue shirt and tailored slacks. "Mr. Sloane," the assistant said. "Your suit's here." He turned. Gabrielle froze. He was younger than she expected. Early 30s, maybe. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at the edges and a jawline almost too sharp to be real. His eyes, though icy gray and assessing, landed on her with a kind of unsettling intensity. "Thanks, Marla," he said, not looking away from Gabrielle. "You can leave us." The assistant gave a nod and left, closing the door behind her. Gabrielle cleared her throat and stepped forward. "Your suit. I made the alterations you asked for." The shoulders were adjusted by 1/2 inch and we took in the waist slightly. He didn't move, just looked at her. She held it out with both hands. "It's all yours." He finally stepped forward and took the bag, his fingers brushing hers. "You work at Needle and Thread?" "I own it, actually," she said before she could stop herself. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You tailored this?" "Every stitch." He unzipped the bag, pulled the suit out, and examined it carefully. Gabrielle watched as he ran his hand over the lapel, traced the seam, checked the lining. His face gave away nothing. "I've had suits made in Milan," he said slowly. "London. Tokyo. This one? Might be better." Her eyes widened. "You're kidding. I don't joke about suits." He looked back at her. "What's your name?" "Gabrielle. Gabrielle Adams." He said it like he was trying it out. "Gabrielle, I'm impressed." She blinked. "Thanks. I should probably get going." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the desk, picked up a sleek black card, and handed it to her. "This is my direct line. I want you to handle all my tailoring from now on." Her fingers closed around the card, but her brain hadn't caught up. "You want me to personally tailor your suits?" "I want you to design a full wardrobe," he said. "You have an eye for detail. That's rare. We'll talk price later." She blinked again. "Okay." He smiled. Not a polite smile, not a corporate smile. Something warmer. "I'll have my assistant schedule a fitting for next week," he added. "In the meantime, Gabrielle, Thanks for bringing this in yourself. No problem, she said, backing toward the door. Enjoy the suit. She left the office with her heart pounding. It was just a job, just a client. But when the elevator doors closed behind her, Gabrielle caught her reflection in the mirror and realized she was smiling. 3 days later, she got a call. Xander wanted to meet for dinner. Not at an office. Not even at her studio. At Lucille. She laughed out loud when she got the message. That's a joke, right? That place has a wait list 3 months long. But when she arrived after borrowing a dress from her cousin, curling her hair, and trying not to panic, the host greeted her by name and walked her straight to a private table on the rooftop terrace. And there he was, Xander Sloane, standing next to a table set with candles, champagne, and a view of the skyline so breathtaking it didn't feel real. You came, he said, pulling her chair out. I still don't fully understand why I'm here. Because I wanted to see you again, he said plainly. She paused. This isn't about suits, is it? It started with the suit, he said. But it's not about the suit anymore. Their eyes locked. And Gabrielle knew this was only the beginning. The waiter poured a pale golden wine into Gabrielle's glass before fading back into the shadows, leaving her alone with the man across the table. Xander hadn't looked away since she sat down. You're not eating, she said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I will, he said. But I'm not used to dinners like this being interesting. She narrowed her eyes slightly. So you usually drag women up here to suffer through bland conversation while staring at the skyline? I never bring anyone here. That made her pause. Why me then? He leaned back, fingers loosely curled around his glass. You walked into my office like it wasn't built to intimidate people. You handed me a suit like it was a regular Tuesday. Then you said you made it yourself and didn't flinch when I said I'd worn better from Tokyo. I don't meet many people who don't try to impress me. I didn't know I was supposed to. That's exactly it. Gabrielle looked down at her plate, then back at him. You're not what I pictured. Neither are you. His gaze dropped to her hands. You've got calluses on your fingers. From stitching. She pulled her hand back instinctively. I work with my hands. It shows. You don't just tailor, you build things. You don't realize how rare that is. I'm not trying to be rare, she said, half laughing. I'm trying to pay rent. You're not charging enough. That's generous coming from someone who hasn't let me invoice him yet. I don't do things by accident, Gabrielle. She set her fork down. So what is this exactly? A dinner to talk about business? Or something else? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He passed it across the table. She unfolded it and blinked. It was a design sketch. A woman's suit jacket, structured, elegant, and unlike anything she'd seen on a runway. Her own initials were watermarked at the bottom. I found this on your studio's website, he said. Hidden under a page no one clicks on. Why isn't it in production? She stared at it. Because I don't have the money. Or the contacts. Or the time. What if you had all three? What are you saying? He leaned forward. I'm saying I want to invest. I'm not talking about a loan, I mean a full-scale launch. Your line. Your name. I'll handle distribution, manufacturing, PR, everything. You just focus on the designs. Gabrielle stared at him. You don't even know me. I know enough. She pushed the sketch back toward him slowly. That's a huge offer to make over dinner. I'm not offering because of dinner. I'm offering because you have something people will want the moment they see it. And because I don't want to watch someone else discover you first. She hesitated. What would you get out of it? Besides the satisfaction of watching you prove everyone wrong? He gave her a slow, deliberate look. A stake in the company. A front row seat to your rise. And maybe the chance to see you more often. Her breath caught. This wasn't just business. And she wasn't sure she was ready for whatever this was turning into. I'd need a contract, she said finally. And a lawyer. Of course. I'll have something drafted by tomorrow. No pressure. You can walk away from it at any time. She nodded slowly, trying to steady the rush in her chest. You don't do things halfway, do you? No, he said. And I don't waste time pretending I can ignore something when it matters. The air shifted. A breeze swept across the rooftop, lifting the tablecloth slightly, but neither of them moved. The city sparkled around them, but all she could focus on was the intensity in his expression. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her voice softer now. "Anything. Why me? Out of all the people you meet, out of all the designers you could throw your money at. Why the girl from Brooklyn with a half-broken sewing machine and a studio the size of a closet?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Because you're the only one who would have brought the suit herself." She didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything at all. After dinner, he walked her to a waiting car. Not a town car. Not a limo, just a sleek black vehicle with tinted windows and a quiet driver. The door opened before she could protest. "I can take the train," she said. "I know, but I'd rather know you get home safe." She hesitated, then climbed in. The drive was silent, but not awkward. He didn't ask to come in when they reached her building. He stepped out, opened the door for her, and waited as she stood on the curb. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "Thank you for not running." She almost laughed. "I still might. I'll take my chances." He didn't kiss her. He didn't need to. She walked up the stairs to her apartment, heart pounding. Inside, her phone was buzzing. Her cousin, Mara, had left a voicemail. Gabrielle hit play and listened. "Okay, don't freak out, but I saw your picture on some gossip site. You're on a rooftop with a guy in a navy suit and sunglasses." "Gabrielle, he's the Sloane." "That's the guy. Do you know what that means?" She paused the message and stared at the wall. She hadn't Googled him. She hadn't wanted to. But now, standing in her tiny kitchen with peeling tile and a window that didn't close properly, she realized something. This wasn't just dinner. This wasn't just business. This was a collision course. And she was already in too deep. Gabrielle stepped into her studio the next morning with her mind still tangled in the night before. The rooftop dinner, Xander's offer, the intensity in his eyes, it all felt too much and yet terrifyingly real. She dropped her keys on the work table and turned on the industrial lamp over her sewing machine. The sketch he'd printed out was still fresh in her mind, but she couldn't let herself get swept up in promises. She needed clarity, paperwork, something solid. The bell above the studio door jingled. She turned, expecting a walk-in client. Instead, a tall man in a navy coat stepped inside, holding a slim black folder. "Xander's assistant." "Miss Adams?" he asked. "That's me." He held out the folder. "Mr. Sloane asked me to deliver this personally. It's the preliminary agreement for your review." There's no pressure to respond quickly. She took it carefully, noting the weight of the paper and the embossed seal on the corner. "Thank you. Also," he added, reaching into his coat again, "this was left in the car last night." He handed her a folded scarf. Silk. Her grandmother's. Her breath caught. "I didn't even realize it was missing. Mr. Sloane did." When the door closed behind him, she set the folder down and stared at it. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she walked over to her sketch wall and studied the pinned designs, most of them years old. They were hers, raw, unpolished, but full of ideas no one had taken seriously. Until now. A knock broke her focus. This time it was someone she recognized, Mara, her cousin, holding 2 coffees and wearing a coat that looked like it had been borrowed from her mom's closet. "You're not dead," Mara said, stepping inside. "That's a relief." Gabrielle exhaled. "I'm not sure I'm alive either. I saw the pictures. Rooftop. Candles. Champagne. I thought you said it was just about tailoring." "It was. Now it's turned into something else. He brought me to a restaurant I couldn't afford in 10 years, offered to launch a fashion line under my name, and then made it sound like all of this was obvious." Mara handed her a coffee. "That's what billionaires do, right? Sweep in, rewrite your life." Gabrielle shook her head. "I don't even know if I want that. I've built everything here from nothing. And now he's offering to change everything just like that. But do you trust him?" That gave her pause. "I don't know," she said finally. "He says things like he already knows the outcome. Like I'm just catching up to something he's already decided." Mara nudged the folder. Then find out what he's really after. Don't sign anything until you do. Gabrielle nodded, her fingers tightening around the coffee cup. Later that afternoon, she walked into the Sloane Industries building again. This time, she didn't feel out of place. She took the executive elevator, stepped out onto the top floor, and walked straight past the assistant's desk. Xander was by the window again, phone in hand, speaking in a clipped tone she hadn't heard before. I don't care what the board thinks. If they want to block the acquisition, let them explain that to our shareholders when the price doubles. He turned as she entered and his expression shifted immediately. I'll call you back. He hung up and crossed the room toward her. I wasn't expecting you today. I figured if we're talking about launching a brand with my name on it, I should probably see the fine print in person. Of course. He gestured to the couch, then walked to the liquor cart and poured a glass of water. Do you want anything? I'm good. He handed her the water anyway, then sat across from her. I read the agreement, she said. It's generous. But I need to know something. Ask. Why are you doing this for me? Really? Is it about the designs? Or is this just another way for you to get close to someone you find interesting? He didn't flinch. It started with the designs. Then it became about you. That's not an answer. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've spent the last decade building things. Companies, systems, teams. I know when something's going to work. You? You're going to work. But yes, I also want to know you. Not as a project. Not as a curiosity. As a person. She studied him, trying to see past the polished exterior. And if I say no to the business? Then I'll still ask to see you again. She didn't expect that. He continued. But I think you're afraid of what happens if you accept. Because it means betting on yourself. And you've never had someone back you before. She felt something tighten in her chest. You talk like you know me. I don't. But I want to. She stood, unsettled by how easily he cut through her defenses. I'll think about it. Take your time. As she turned to leave, he said something that made her stop at the door. I'm hosting a gala next Saturday, part of a fundraiser for a clean energy initiative. I'd like you to come. She looked back. Why? Because I want you to see the world I live in. And I want them to see you. She hesitated. Fine. But I'm not wearing anything off the rack. His lips curved, just slightly. I wouldn't expect you to. Gabrielle walked out of the office and into the elevator, her heart racing again, but for a different reason this time. This wasn't just a man trying to impress her anymore. This was a man who saw something in her she hadn't dared to see in herself. And whether she was ready or not, her world was already changing. Gabrielle stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, her fingers curled loosely around the stem of her champagne glass, eyes scanning the crowd. The room glittered beneath a crystal chandelier the size of her entire studio, and everywhere she looked, men and women in tailored tuxedos and floor-length gowns moved with effortless grace. There was an orchestra playing something sweeping and elegant in the background, and the scent of orchids drifted through the air from massive arrangements flanking the entrance. She'd made her gown herself, a midnight blue column dress with asymmetrical lines and a structured bodice that hinted at her design instincts without shouting. It had taken her 3 sleepless nights to finish it. Every stitch had been a silent argument with herself, a battle between fear and ambition. Didn't think you'd come? Xander's voice came from behind her, low and close. She turned, heart skipping as she took him in. He wore a deep charcoal suit with a subtle satin sheen, the fabric catching the light as he stepped closer. No tie, collar open. Somehow that made him look even more powerful. I almost didn't, she said. What changed your mind? I figured if I was going to be terrified, I might as well be terrified in silk. He smiled, not the polite kind people wore in rooms like this, but one that reached his eyes and softened the plane of his jaw. You made the dress. Of course. You could shut down this entire event just by standing still. She raised a brow. Is that your version of a compliment? It's a warning. Before she could respond, a man approached them, older, with thinning blonde hair and an expensive watch that gleamed beneath his cuff. His gaze swept over Gabrielle with the kind of practiced disinterest she'd seen plenty of times before. Xander, he said. I wasn't aware you were bringing a date. I didn't know I needed your approval, Xander said evenly. The man chuckled, clearly unbothered. Always a sharp tongue. You'll be pleased to know the board signed off on the expansion. I'd imagine your clean energy division will double by next quarter. Then I'll expect the same from your investment. The man gave a nod, then turned to Gabrielle. And you are? Gabrielle Adams? He waited. When she didn't elaborate, he gave a tight smile and walked away. Gabrielle leaned toward Xander. Friend of yours. Investor, he said. And a perfect example of why I wanted you here. Because I make awkward introductions easier? Because this world? He glanced around. It's built on perception. And they don't know what to do with someone who doesn't play by the rules. She looked up at him. And you do. I know when to break them. A server passed by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres and Gabrielle grabbed one to give her hand something to do. She took a bite without really tasting it and scanned the room again. How many of these people actually know what you do? She asked. Enough to be afraid of what I'll do next. She laughed quietly. That sounds exhausting. It is. That's why I wanted someone different beside me. She turned toward him fully. You keep saying that I'm different, that I'm rare. But what happens when the novelty wears off? Then I'll still want to be around you, because you remind me that not everything has to be strategic, that some things are just real. Before she could respond, a woman approached, sleek bun, silver gown, clipboard in hand. Mr. Sloane, we're ready for your remarks. He nodded, then turned to Gabrielle. Come with me. To the stage. To the wings. She followed him through a corridor lined with velvet ropes and gold sconces. When they stopped behind the curtain, the distant buzz of hundreds of conversations filled the air. You're about to make a speech in front of a room full of millionaires and politicians, she said. And you brought me along like a good luck charm? Something like that. He stepped forward, but instead of moving toward the stage, he turned to face her. I've built a life most people wouldn't walk away from, he said. But I don't want to look back on all of this and realize the only thing I ever built was an empire with no soul. Her breath caught. I want more than boardrooms and negotiations. I want someone who challenges me. Someone who doesn't need my money but still makes me want to give her everything. The orchestra music faded. Someone was announcing his name on stage. He didn't move. I'm not asking for an answer right now, he said. But I need you to know that this isn't a game. Or a transaction. It's real. And I'm all in. Then he turned and stepped through the curtain, applause rising like thunder as he walked into the spotlight. Gabrielle stood frozen in the wings, heart pounding. She felt like she was watching a moment happen that would divide her life into two parts. Before and after. When the applause died down and he began his speech, something about sustainable ventures, next generation tech, social responsibility, she watched the crowd. They listened, nodded, smiled politely. But when he glanced toward the wings, just once, it wasn't the crowd he was speaking to anymore. It was her. Afterward, when the applause faded and the lights dimmed, he found her again near the edge of the dance floor. I meant every word, he said. She didn't reply right away. Her fingers curled around his lapel and she pulled him down into a kiss that said exactly what words couldn't. It wasn't tentative or cautious. It was a decision. When they pulled apart, she looked up at him. I'm in, she said. All of it. The partnership. The line. The rest of whatever this turns into. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Like a storm settling. Then it's done. Weeks passed in a blur after that. Contracts signed. Designs approved. A new workspace secured, sunlit, expansive, and filled with bolts of fabric she never could have afforded before. Xander never missed a fitting. He never tried to change her vision. He just made things possible. The day of her first official show, she stood backstage in a tailored suit of her own design, sleek, powerful, unapologetically hers. Xander appeared just before the lights went down, holding something in his hand. You forgot to wear this, he said. It was the scarf she'd left behind weeks ago, now framed in a shadow box. She laughed. You framed it. I thought it might be the first artifact in the Gabrielle Adams legacy collection. She kissed him again, this time slower. You're ridiculous. And you're brilliant. Good thing we're a team. They stood together as the show began, the models walking out to music she'd chosen, in designs she'd created. Her name flashed on the giant screen behind them in bold, elegant script. Gabrielle Adams. She looked at the man beside her, the one who had seen her long before the world did, and smiled. For once, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready. The morning sun filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden streaks across the loft. Gabrielle stood barefoot on the cool marble, a steaming mug of coffee in hand, watching the city stir awake below. Behind her, sketches were scattered across the dining table, final revisions for her next collection. A soft rustle of sheets came from the bedroom as Xander emerged, shirtless, hair tousled, eyes still heavy with sleep. You've been up for hours, he said, voice rough from sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about the show in Milan, she replied without turning. I want to add 2 new looks, something unexpected. Xander stepped behind her and rested his hands on her waist. You realize you've already outdesigned every other label on the roster? That doesn't mean I stop pushing. He kissed her shoulder, warm and unhurried. I know. It's one of the reasons I love you. She turned in his arms, searching his face. You've never said that before. I have, he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. Just not out loud. She set the mug down and looked up at him. Say it again. I love you, Gabrielle. Her chest tightened, but not from fear, not anymore. I love you, too. He leaned in and kissed her, slow and certain, like he had all the time in the world. When they pulled apart, he didn't let go. I booked the villa in Tuscany, he said. She blinked. What villa? The one you mentioned in passing 3 weeks ago. The one with the olive trees and the stone terrace overlooking the hills. She stared at him. You actually found it? I had someone find it, yes. We leave Tuesday. I have fittings that week, she said, even as her lips curved. They'll be flown to the villa if needed. You're impossible. I'm persistent. They spent the rest of the morning on the couch, her legs draped over his, sketchbook balanced between them. When her phone buzzed, she paused. It's from the foundation, she said after reading the message. Which one? The one we started. He nodded. What's the update? They confirmed the first round of grants have been approved. 10 scholarships, all for women-owned design startups. Xander reached for her hand. You did this. We did this. Later that evening, they attended a black-tie gala at the Met, this time not as guests but as honorees. Gabrielle's line had been named the most innovative launch of the year, and a portion of the night's proceeds would go to the foundation they'd built together. As they entered the museum's grand atrium, cameras flashed, but Gabrielle didn't flinch. She wore a structured gown in ivory with an open back and sculpted neckline, her own design. Xander's hand rested at the small of her back, grounding her. You look like every dream I never knew I had, he whispered. You're just saying that because I made it. I'm saying that because it's true. They were seated at the center table, surrounded by some of the most powerful figures across industries. But Gabrielle never once felt out of place. Not anymore. When the host called her name, she stood and walked onto the stage, heels clicking softly on polished stone. The applause swelled, but she waited for it to fade before speaking. A year ago, I was sewing in a studio that barely had working heat, she began. I never imagined I'd be here. But someone saw something in me before I did. And instead of trying to change me, he made space for me to become who I was meant to be. She paused, locking eyes with Xander. I built these designs with my hands. But this journey? We built it together. The applause returned louder now, more personal. She stepped down and Xander rose as she returned to their table. Without hesitation, he pulled her close and kissed her, not caring about the cameras or the whispers. The next few months passed in a rhythm that felt almost surreal. The Milan show was a triumph. Her designs were picked up by international boutiques. The foundation expanded into mentorship programs. They traveled to Tokyo, then Paris, then back home to New York. where their penthouse was filled with sketches, bolts of fabric, and quiet laughter shared over late-night glasses of wine. One rainy afternoon, Gabrielle was working in her studio when she found a small box on her work table. No note, just her name written in black script. Inside was a ring, not flashy, not enormous, but elegant. A single sapphire, deep blue and rich, flanked by 2 small diamonds. The setting looked vintage, like something with a story. She turned as Xander entered, coat damp from the rain. "You left something on my table," she said. "I figured you'd find it eventually." She stepped toward him, the box still in her hand. "Is this the part where you get down on one knee?" "No," he said. "This is the part where I ask if you believe in forever." She looked at the ring, then back at him. "I believe in us. Then marry me." "I thought you'd never ask." They kept it small. A ceremony in the villa in Tuscany surrounded by olive trees and golden light. Her dress was simple ivory silk, no train, no veil. Just her designs, her vision, her truth. He wore linen and no tie, barefoot in the grass. They said vows that weren't rehearsed, but honest. There were no crowds, no flashing cameras, just them, and that was enough. Afterward, they danced beneath strings of lights, barefoot and carefree. The night hummed with quiet music, clinking glasses, and the kind of laughter that only came when everything had finally found its place. Years later, Gabrielle's name hung above fashion houses in cities across the world. Her foundation had funded hundreds of designers, and her lines became known not just for their elegance, but for their integrity, uncompromising, unapologetically bold. And through it all, Xander remained at her side. Not in front, not behind, beside. They built empires, but more importantly, they built a life. A life full of days that started with coffee and ended with kisses. A life stitched not from fabric, but from trust, ambition, and the kind of love that asked for nothing but gave everything. Together. Always.